So I didn't go on a date in 10 years. I had a big career. I was busy. I was managing bands. I was starting tech companies. I was focusing on everything except for finding a partner. But I wanted a family. I wanted to be a mum, and I didn't want to be alone for the rest of my life.
So what would you date?
I don't know, honestly. I think I was just scared. Anyway, I decided to change and I made a resolution. 1 date every week for an entire year. It was so hard. I dated for 3 years straight. In the end, I dated 138 different men.
And what happened?
I got my heart broken, I got humiliated, but I wrote a book about it.
What, for people who are looking for a relationship?
Not just people who are looking for a relationship, but I think if you're looking for a relationship, it'll be super useful. But there is so much more that I learned. I learned about myself, I learned for my career and my business, I learned about relationships with my friends. Now my relationship Hello everyone and welcome to Love in Lockdown. I'm Rebecca Campbell. This is the third in our series of webinar events for singles, some of whom are in lockdown, and I know that we've got a lot who are joining us from all over the country and in New Zealand as well. So I want to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands in which we are all meeting on today, their owners and their elders past and present, because we are meeting online in lots of different places. I also want to acknowledge that we are, for many of us, in lockdown. I know in Sydney have been in lockdown since late June, and I can only imagine how difficult that would be, particularly for those who are on their own. So I hope you are enjoying these events. Please get into the chat. We've got a great community. We've got more than 300 people joining us live tonight. And we've got one more of these events next Tuesday as well. I also want to acknowledge RSVP. So RSVP are our partner in these events and have been incredibly supportive in helping put them together. So thank you to RSVP. It is the site that I used when I was online dating. And it does seem to be the site that is for people who are serious about looking for a relationship. So I want to share what is going to happen tonight. First up, we have a chat with Trudy Gilbert. So Trudy is Australia's kind of affectionately known as Australia's millionaire matchmaker. She has a matchmaking company called Elite Introductions. And she has worked as a matchmaker for more than 20 years. She'll come on in a minute and give us some more of her background. But we're going to hear from Trudy, who meets thousands of singles hoping to find a partner, what men and women ask for when they approach a matchmaker. She gets feedback on all of the first dates. So what do people say they went well? What do people say about dates when it didn't go well? So she gets that feedback that so many of us when we're dating want to know, like what happened, both the good and the bad. And she also supports both sides of the people she's matching with the early stages of their relationship. So we'll find out what goes well and what goes wrong. We are going to bring on tonight 2 couples. So tonight's webinar event is called Dating Success. So we have my lovely partner, Rod, who you might be able to see. He's also doing tech. So we met on Tinder in 2014 after my 138-day journey, which I've written about in my book. And we also have Amanda and John joining us, who met on RSVP in 2017 and married in February this year. So we're going to talk to the couples about the process of, I know I learned a lot through online dating through my journey, and I know Amanda and John have as well. But how was the process leading up to the first date with the person that they eventually ended up forming a long-term relationship with? How was that first date different? And what are some of the learnings from the early stages of those relationships? So we will have the Q&A open. So if you want to ask questions, please put your questions for anyone who's talking tonight in the Q&A, and we'll come to them in the last 20 minutes. But keep the questions coming. I think that's all. I'm now super excited to introduce you to Trudy. We have had a chat. We chatted yesterday in preparation for tonight, And Trudy has some awesome, juicy stories to share with us, as well as some incredible insights. So Trudy, we'll put a link to your website up. As I mentioned before, Trudy has been matching. You've matched thousands of couples over 25 years. So you see what goes right and what goes wrong. And you also have a podcast, which is called How to Win at the Dating Game. So check out Trudy's website. And Trudy, I'm very excited to have you join us tonight.
Thank you, Rebecca. I'm excited to be here.
Do you want to just give us a quick, is there anything that I've missed in how I've introduced you about what you do as a matchmaker? Can you just tell us the process of how a matchmaking service works?
Sure. So look, there's quite a few steps that are involved in our process before we work with a client. Firstly, we have a phone interview to learn a bit about them and get a sense of what they're looking for in a partner. So that phone call could be anywhere from, 10 minutes to half an hour. We then send them a questionnaire to get them to give us more detail about their values, their interests, their life stage, where they're at. We then also get them to complete a partner profile, which is an extensive criteria list about what they're looking for. And then we move to a Zoom interview, which is for about an hour, and it's a chance for us to chat freely, for me to get a sense of who they are, their interests, values, lifestyle, energy levels. If I feel they're the right fit for the agency, it's important that we have all of these checks in place before we decide to work with someone, because we want to make sure we've got the right candidates for them.
Awesome. So you must, and that's a pretty rigorous interview process. What do you find? What do people ask for in that interview process? But also, like, you must see some patterns of, you've got a kind of process of let's let this person in or let's not.
Yes.
What are the kind of things that you look for to say that tells you this could be a good match for someone?
Sure. Well, first of all, after doing this for it's nearly 20 years, so we've nearly hit the 20-year mark, and having interviewed and introduced thousands of singles over that time, I'm pretty good at assessing someone's success in the process, in the membership. So there are some key distinctions that I observe between people who I know will do well and who I know will struggle. And so for those that are open, genuine, fun, trusting, they're the ones that will have the most success. For those who are a little more fixed on the outcome, they've got a long list of criteria, they have trouble trusting, allowing the dynamic between two people to unfold naturally. They can't handle the anxiety of dating, not knowing if their partner likes them, not, wondering when they're going to call. Those are the people that will really struggle.
So what do you say to those? Like, that is a lot of people. I know when I started dating, I would be anxious after a date as to whether someone was going to call. What's your advice for those people?
My advice is that you have to keep busy, and you have to just realize that there's some things that you can't control in the dating process, as you would know, right? You just have to kind of let things unfold. You have to trust, we support people, we reassure them. You just have to be genuine and be yourself. Don't be so focused on the outcome. It's not going to do anyone any good for you to start planning, your wedding, your children's surnames. You're only on date number 2 and you've already got the holiday house booked for the Christmas period.
Looking at my book and what I did. That I did many times.
Yeah, just slowly. That's they're the couples that have the most success.
Is there anything people ask for? I mean, I'm just interested. This is kind of just juicy stuff. But what do people ask for that make you go, oh no, this is not going to work?
Oh, look, everybody loves the juicy stuff. Okay, so I'll just get right to it. So look, everybody has their own criteria, but when that list becomes too long or specific, that's the problem. And I get things like eye color, height, hair color, body type. I mean, when things start to get really specific like that, then I know that, I've got a potential, problem, because how do you know that love is going to come into you in that package? Are you trying to recreate a relationship that you've had in the past by having your new partner fit that exact physical form? Why is there so much description around their physical? You know, you can't predict who you're going to fall in love with, and you need to focus on core criteria like an alignment of values, similar life stage, common interests. You know, they're the key things that are going to make it successful, you know.
We're
And
talking about the nice to haves versus the non-negotiables.
that's right. That's exactly right. You know, people can have criteria, but let's put them into two categories. The non-negotiables, so the key things that you really, you know, want, like, you know, for you realized it was, you know, caring and someone who made you feel bigger, right?
Yeah, who helped me with my, you know, who supported me, I guess, like, you know, you see right here, right now. But
Yeah, here
yes,
he is.
supports me in writing a book or supports my growth. I think that's important. But that was important
Exactly.
for me.
Exactly. The problem that I see is when people are, you know, approach this with a sense of entitlement. You know, it's more around they're thinking, you know, about what they can get out of a relationship. And you had a fabulous quote in your book, which I absolutely loved, you know, towards the end, when you said, I started this process looking for what I could get from a partner, but I learnt that relationships are about what you give.
Well,
And
that's the joy in it.
that's right. When you have that mindset, it changes everything, because otherwise people turn up and they're like, well, you know, is this person good enough for me? Do they match, you know, what I bring? But that's the problem. Do they really bring to the table what they're asking for in their partner in return? You know,
Yeah.
that's
How could I make this person happy? And you'll get so much joy out of that.
absolutely.
So I want to go into preparing. So you've had the interview, you've got someone into your agency, you think, you know, this person, I don't know, maybe they're shy, or maybe, but they have potential to find love. So how do you help them prepare? What advice would you give to our audience who are, you know, some of whom are embarking on dating for the first time or who are on the dating journey? How do you prepare yourself?
Okay. So basically, you know, to prepare yourself, first of all, I just want to say that I think a lot of people that are out there dating, they're failing at dating because they don't realize that they're actually not ready to date or to have a relationship, that they still have work to do. So there are a number of aspects that people need to consider in order to be prepared for success in a relationship. And look, actually, on my website, trudygilbert.com, there's a free relationship readiness test, which is based on the traits that I've identified that succeed in the dating process. And I think this tool will be very helpful for people in order to assess if they're ready. And we talk about things like, so first of all, you need to be physically prepared. You know, are you close to your ideal body weight? Do you have a good level of inner health? You know, are you well groomed and presenting at a high level? You know, that's important. First off, are you emotionally prepared? You know, are you clear of any baggage? Are you mentally prepared? Are you in the right headspace? You know, you're not 2 months out of a relationship, 2 months out of a 10-year marriage, you know, that kind of thing. Are you socially prepared? Are you in a positive, you know, are you open and can you communicate with your community in a positive way? And are you coming from a place of openness, gratitude, and flexibility, or are you too rigid? And, you know, if you are so, then, you know, you need to have an element of flexibility when you know, meeting people, because not everything is going to happen the way you plan or envisage or fantasize.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely had, you know, could see often on the dates that didn't work, you know, I'd see a future and how exactly it was going to go, and then it doesn't go like that. No one finds that attractive, right? People want to build a shared reality, you know, and a shared vision together.
That's right.
So I want to talk about the first date. So how should you plan a first date? And a common question is, what's a good venue? Like, what's a good, should you plan a coffee? Should you plan, what do you think works?
Yep. Look, I've got really clear tips on this, you know, because I get asked this, you know, often. And my advice is basically, I think you have to approach first dates with the right strategy, and that is setting the mood for romance. So every decision that you make, the time of day that you meet, the activity, the outfit, how much time you allocate to your date, you need to ask yourself, am I setting the mood for romance? So, for example, if you make your date a coffee date, you know, that you schedule between other commitments or work meetings, does this set the mood for romance? If you arrive to your date wearing active wear, you know, or you haven't paid much attention to presenting yourself, is this setting the mood for romance? Well, I would say to you, no, it's not. So my advice to clients is meet for a drink, maybe a wine bar if that works for you. You'll be nervous, so it might be a way to settle the nerves, and it's a chance for you to dress up, be sexy, wear something nice, and set the mood for romance. Your only goal on a first date is to build connection, rapport, and chemistry. So all your decisions about where to go, what to do, what to wear, need to have that as a focus.
I saw a comment in chat, which I'd like to bring up just right now. I totally agree with that. I did lots of 138 days. I did lots of coffee dates, and I agree. There's no romance there, but somewhere nice for a drink where you can stay for dinner if it's going well. That works really well. But at the moment, as someone just mentioned on chat, we are in lockdown. So, and you must still be matching people and people meeting on first dates. So how are people able to create romance? And how are you guiding people to create romance on their dates now?
Sure. Look, that is a great question. And our members have been so creative. They've obviously been able to do, walking dates, and some people even done things like, kayaking or playing tennis. But, you can also have fun on Zoom dates. So we've had couples that have, cooked together. They've prepared the same meal, obviously through Zoom. They've had, wine tastings. They've even played music together. We had one couple, he played the guitar, she played the piano. You can have some really lovely, unique experiences when we're pushed to be creative and connect. So yeah.
So you must get the feedback. So after you've matched these two people, and then they organize a date, right?
Yes.
And then afterwards, do you call them both and ask them, how did it go?
Yes, or we ask them to check in with us as well. So yes, we get feedback from both parties.
So you get that feedback. I so badly wanted that feedback when I went on a date and I never heard from the person again. What went wrong? So what is it that, what do you see going wrong on a first date first? I can say, no, it's not the right person. What do they say happened?
Okay, so look, I could talk to you for days about mistakes that people make on first dates, but I'm just going to limit it to 3 that I think are really important. So the first one is that people take it way too seriously. They feel like it's a job interview. They have a checklist of questions that they want answered, and they go through them one by one. And, I cringe when I hear from my clients, it was okay, but it didn't really feel like a date. It felt more like a job interview. There was no laughter or flirting or chemistry. There needs to be laughter and flirting and chemistry and smiling. That's really, really important. I actually have a free course on my website, trudygilbert.com, called 5 Ways to Build Chemistry. And I think that people don't realize that chemistry is something that you can actually have a role in creating. It's not just a fairy coming and sprinkling magic dust on the both of you. You can actually create chemistry. It's science. So, I think that people don't
like when someone turns up and it's like an interview. I mean, I'm sure I did that, but you don't think that you're doing it at the time. What is it when you're the person that's giving that impression of, you're kind of assessing someone? What are they doing? Can you describe what that looks like?
Sure. Well, they're just kind of more interested in getting their checklist answered than engaging in conversation and being present and being genuine and being real. Yeah. It's more about assessing that person then and there and finding out everything that you can about them to know whether or not you want to spend the rest of your life with them, you want to have children, you have an agenda. You have a serious agenda, and you're not being present, and it's very hard for somebody to connect with you when you have an ulterior motive. So, you have to throw that checklist away, because, the best way to connect with people is to be authentic and be in the moment, and laughter and commonality. You have to find common interests. You don't have a list of things like you have to check off in order to know whether or not you want to see that person again. Your first date is only about having a nice time, both of you leaving and thinking, wow, that was a really lovely evening. I really enjoyed spending time with that person. They made me feel good. We have things in common. Let's go out again.
Mm. So tell us, was there other things that you wanted to add in terms of bad things to do on a first date?
Oh, yes.
Or-
What else did I want to tell you? So
Checklist?
first of all,
Sorry,
sorry, say that again, Rebecca.
you said checklist was one.
Yep.
Assessment. What were the other two big mistakes that you wanted to call out?
Yes, checklist is one. The other thing is that, people jump too soon on a first date. They jump into relationship mode. They're already asking their partner deep and mean, like, two questions that are too personal, like, why did your last relationship end? Tell me why your marriage ended. These questions are very common on first dates, and they're so inappropriate. It's not the time and space to be doing that and talking about these things. The first date should be light and fun and playful, and you should just be getting to know each other in a light way. Okay, those questions are for later on. And so, people are thinking that they're already in that headspace when they shouldn't be going there. It's too much.
What about, a lot of our audience have kids and they're looking for, a new relationship, but kids is kind of something you've got to think about. Is that something you should talk about on your first date? How are you going to manage?
No, you should not be talking about how to manage kids. There needs to be a distinction between the phase of dating and the phase of relationship. And those questions come later. You need to, what's the word I'm looking for? You need to give give presence to the date, to the dating phase. Don't rush it. Those things will come later. You'll work it out. I've had clients that have asked their dates, would you be willing to do this and that, in the future? And they've gone, no. But, if they'd only stayed to, but later on they've found out that person would have been open to that, or they have been.
Yeah. Okay, so tell us about when things go well, when you have a client go, call you up the next day going, oh my goodness, I can't believe you just introduced me. I'm going to spend the rest of my life with this person, or like it just went really well. And ones that tend to lead to relationships. What do they say about the date?
So they follow my advice. They don't treat it like a job interview, and they have fun. They relax. They say to me, oh, we were the last to leave the restaurant. We talked all night. We found out we had so much in common. We even had friends in common. They're genuine. They're in the moment. There's no agenda, no checklist, no pressure, and they just build rapport and connection. Another thing I hear is that there is a very even split of communication where, no one person is dominating the conversation. And you both have to work to get that balance right, because if not, then the other person will just lose interest, and you find yourself walking away and thinking, wow, all they did was talk about themselves all night. But, don't complain about it. You step up and share more about yourself in that space. Maybe, it's contributing something personal to yourself so that you can own that, and take control of the date. People have more control in the success of the dates than they're currently taking responsibility for. You can change the direction, the path, of the way things are going. Side comment, like things like, if people are asking questions that are too personal, it's your responsibility to stop it and not answer it. You don't have to answer every question that's thrown at you on a date. You can say, look, let's not go there. Let's talk about it another time, and then change the topic. That's the best way to avoid a topic that you don't want to talk about. Ask them something else.
What about, there's a lot of, something we've had has come up on this series, and others who I've spoken to will say they don't want to change themselves for someone. They don't want to, if, in terms of like their appearance, or, they might have stuff in their previous relationships that they want to get out there, and they're like, well, if the person can't handle it, then, and they don't want me exactly as I am, then they're not the right match for me. So do you hear that, and what do you say? What's your advice?
I hear that, and I internally do this massive eye roll of, oh my God, please. Okay. My response is going to be a little bit controversial, Rebecca, because I'm really over this point. I think it's incredibly lazy and selfish. So the mistake that I see people make is that they feel that it's fine to bear their whole history, their warts and all too soon. Okay. Of course, you're going to end up with someone who love you for you. And, that's wonderful, but you have to get there. It takes time. You have to work at it. It doesn't come automatically. It's another example of where people are thinking that they're in relationship mode on their date. You have to earn that space. It's like you walking around in your tracky dacks in your lounge room, and the fact that you might be grumpy in the morning because you haven't had your coffee yet, and you're doing that early on in the dating process. Well, where's the effort? You can't just treat your other partner like that. I just want to be the real me. I just want to be open and honest. Too much information. It's selfish. Don't treat your date like a therapist. Be respectful. Build rapport with your date. I've heard of people literally going through the minute details of their divorce settlement on their date, so much so that their date, felt like completely like a therapist. Now, let me just say that both parties are at fault there. One for asking, the other for answering. But I tell people what you've got to do is you've got to build good credits. You need to show your good traits. Show that you're caring, kind, reliable, smart, fun, genuine. Revealing too much too soon will only backfire on you. There has to be a balance. If you're meeting someone for the first time and all you do is complain and whinge and tell them negative things, well, that's their only impression that they're going to have of you. You need to also show them the good side, and you need to respect that this is a very delicate stage of dating, and you need to do what you can to let it grow and nurture it. Would you turn up to a job interview in jeans and a dirty t-shirt and say to them, well, look, I'm often late to work. I'm not very productive past 2:00. So, you should see through all that and hire me anyway.
That's good. That is good advice. I love your directness. You've obviously spoken to a lot of people and coached them.
I have. And I just think people need to really think about the impact of what they're,
I've got one last question, and then I want to bring on our couples. So you, the relationship, the early relationship phase. So you've had a great first date, and and then they're going through the kind of like, do you speak to them through the kind of wobbly ups and downs of the first months of their relationship?
Yes.
What do you see that's an indicator that things are going to go well, and what do you see as an indicator of things that are not going to go well?
Okay, great. So basically, the answer to that is that the speed at which the relationship unfolds will determine the success, can have a major impact in the success or the failure of that relationship. So for example, those people think that sometimes they need to have this big bang spark, like in the movies. You meet someone, it's intense, it's instant attraction, and then that's it. That's the ideal. But really, it's the ones that take a few dates to get going. They're the relationships that tend to have longevity. So I have, for example, a client. His name is Jake. He met a gorgeous girl. They had lots in common. They saw each other over the weekend. They had a Friday night date, and by Monday they'd already seen each other 3 times. He calls me on Monday telling me that he's met his new wife. A couple of weeks later, he introduced her to his friends and his family, and then a few weeks after that, it was all over. He just got too excited, too intense, and what happened was that he then got scared and stepped back and thought, whoa, this is way too serious. She was completely blindsided and baffled, devastated by the abandonment. And I see this happen a lot. It's really poor behavior. So my advice is take it slowly. This is not Hollywood, where one dinner turns into a weekend together and then he moves in a few days later, and then you're planning the wedding. Things take time to develop. Don't rush. Let it blossom. Relationships are like wine. They take time to get better.
Thanks, Trudy. I'm now excited to invite on Rod, my lovely partner, and Amanda and John, who I mentioned before, met on RSVP in 2017 and married earlier this year. Can we see everyone? Great, we're all there. I'm going to start by asking Amanda and John just to share a little of your story. And I'm going to just, as during the session, we're all going to be here until the end of the webinar. And I'm going to be asking some of the questions from the Q&A as we go. So keep them coming in. I'm looking at them at the same time. There's some great questions in there. Excellent. Amanda and John, can you tell us your story?
Well, essentially, I came from a relationship where I was de facto for 13 years, and I was hurt at the breakup, but I called it. And I gave myself about almost 5 years of being single, essentially because I wasn't ready to redate. I really felt that I needed to find the lost parts of myself. So I went what I call a regathering process, a lot of self-healing, and that was having fun, essentially, being more curious about myself and what my interests were, and reflective of how I had shown up in my previous relationship, because I'm a believer it takes two. It really does. The anger I felt was the fact that I realized that I had pretty well overcompromised myself and lost my values. So in the process of me getting ready to be dating again, it was essentially that, assessing where my values were, in line of importance, and how I wanted to be in a relationship. So I felt if I knew more about myself and how I wanted to be and show up, then that would be reflective and mirror back to me. So I got more clarity than who it was I wanted. So when I became super clear on what I wanted, that was when I was ready. And I kind of even wrote it down, which is kind of out there, but it was more emotions. It was character traits, values, interests, even their music tastes.
Come in there, Amanda, but can you tell us how many dates did you go on before you met John? I'm just curious about this.
About 16.
16.
I went on 16 dates, most of them coffee dates. And I picked a coffee date because I thought, man, if they're not what they say they are, and they're really like, and there's no flow in the conversation, I'm out of there. But if there was rapport, I felt I could be really then more progressive with the connection, where you could then continue the conversation into evening, where you could have now that romantic dinner date and then flourish more in the personality that you could explore in fun and gesture conversations in a nice candlelit dinner somewhere. Total mood change from lunch, coffee to evening. But I think it's the security of a coffee date where you can be, I think, more relaxed in a coffee date, where when you go for an evening, there's that more of that pretense of really feeling sexier and putting on that look and dress kind of vibe. But I have to say that didn't go right with us.
I want to go to John. Can you share us a little of your story? I just ask you to keep it brief if we can.
Yeah, sure. So I came out of a relationship in 2015 with two kids. I was an older dad. It just wasn't working out for both of us. We came to a natural end. I spent about 2 years in what Amanda, called the regathering process, understanding who I was, what were my values. That relationship was 21 years. So I had a lot of repairing to do. I'd been involved in men's groups and men's gatherings for many years. So I had lots of good male friends around me. And I eventually met a guy who said, look, you've got to get out, you've got to date a lot to know what you don't want. So he pointed me to RSVP. I got on there for probably a good 18 months, probably did about a dozen dates. None of them were really what I was looking for. And then I shut down all my extracurricular activities probably about the middle of 2017, because I had a certain number of things I needed to get in place first around my life, which I did. And then the moment I was ready, I basically turned RSVP back on and up popped Amanda's profile, and that was it. And what I loved about the profile was the authenticity in the profile about her likes and music and traveling and all that sort of stuff. And I went, oh wow, here's a woman, who has very similar values and interests to me. Let's go from there.
That is a really good point, because we've had a lot of questions the last couple of weeks about dating profiles.
Yeah.
And what is it that people are attracted to on a dating profile? And that has been our advice. The advice, we had the CEO of RSVP on, and he talked about how important it is to show what you're passionate about.
Yeah.
You know, be positive, that you do travel, that you read, that you know, things that you're interested in.
And
What was it, Amanda, about John's profile that you found interesting?
Well, it was the same thing, which reflective. I mean, he used a current photograph, really nice, but you know, same like current photographs. There's no like something like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And I could really get a sense of him in how he, in his first paragraph, like on the RSVP, you can present yourself. And so you've got good choices there of how you want to come across. So he seemed really sincere and authentic. And I could feel that there was a very strong fun element. When the profiles are great because you can put your interests and your passions and stuff there. So you've got an inkling whether, you know, you've got something to talk about.
Yeah.
I liked his authenticity.
I think that's right. Like a real photo, not a photo next to a sports car or something.
Yeah.
A photo where you think this looks like a nice, genuine person, shows their passions and interests. They look interesting and they're out, you know, enjoying their own life, is someone who you'd be attracted to meeting, right?
Mm.
Well, I consider myself very much a lifeist. And my opening line to Amanda was, I know I'm outside your age demographic, but I've yet to find someone who has a passion for life that matches mine. and that sort of pulled Amanda in, I think, to the point that our first date was actually a date.
Right. And so tell us about that first date.
Well, we met at, it was an evening date. So we met at a pub. So it was at the Northern Beaches, the Newport Arms, which is a really beautiful place.
Yeah.
And it was busy. So you were amongst the energy and atmosphere of other people socializing in that kind of like fun environment and a good music. We chatted. Like, I think is when we first greeted, because we had enough conversation through chat, that it gave us the comfort that on first meeting, when we approached each other, we hugged, like gently, but there was a sincere warmth there and respect. The conversation was easy. I think it flowed. It's probably one of the most flowing, connected conversations that I'd had on any date. And that was, so I felt a next date was appropriate.
A good 4 to 5 hours.
Yeah, it was a big date.
And plenty of humor, because we're sitting there having a conversation and the bloke comes over and finds a chair. He said, is this chair spare? And we go, yes, thinking he's going to take it away. And he said he sat down and starts talking to us because he's had a fair bit to drink, this guy.
And his lady said, don't stop bugging them. It could be their first date.
And we just cracked up laughing. He looked at us and went, oh my God, it's not, is it? We went, yep.
Yeah. So
I had a lot of humor.
obviously we were from the outside looking in, we were having fun and looked like we really knew each other. So we took that as a compliment.
We're going to come to the early stages of your relationship in a moment, and there'll be questions. The audience, feel free to ask questions to Amanda and John as well. I want to bring on Rod. You'll have to unmute yourself, darling. Thank you.
Here I am.
Rod is my lovely partner who I met after he was my 138th date. So I've seen it all through online dating, but our date was very different. So Rod, I just want to ask you, you know, from a profile perspective, because we met on Tinder. I don't know if I was dating, if I was dating now, I probably wouldn't be on Tinder, just given that it's shifted its demographic since back in 2014. But we did meet on Tinder. Was there anything that, you know, can you tell us your background a little and the and of dating and about my profile? Anyway.
I just come out of a long-term relationship. I hadn't been dating for very long, but I was looking for a profile that was, you know, really light and happy and energetic, and had a great picture on it, and that's what I found. So
what did I write? So I had written on my Tinder profile, because you can only do a couple of lines. So I wrote likes and dislikes because I wanted to warn off people that I was going to be a bad match for, but I didn't want it. I wanted to do it in a way that was fun. So I wrote, do you remember what I wrote in terms of likes and dislikes?
That you like dancing to Michael Jackson, and your dislike was Tony Abbott, which
I also, he was Prime
Well,
Minister.
cut to the chase for me. It was perfect.
But I also wrote, I like, trees and Hillary Clinton and swimming in the ocean, things like that. So it was in my 140 characters, and dislikes kind of pessimists and Tony Abbott, I think. So it was like enough to give you a sense.
Yeah.
And you didn't
A
say
really clear sense of what your values were. So I could see your values straight away.
and then we had, I talk a lot about screening phone calls. So to manage my 138 date pipeline, I would message lots of people on the different apps, and then I would have calls on a Sunday afternoon. So Rod and I had a phone call. I honestly don't remember the phone call particularly. I definitely wasn't an outstanding, this is going to be my partner phone call, but we did agree to meet for a date. And then we met on a Friday night, and I really thought at that stage I'd had enough of dating, really, but I was kind of resolved. I was in a really good place, and I was quite happy being single at that particular point, but I was going to keep dating because I committed to it. And I thought, we'll meet for a drink, and then I'll be at home in bed by 8 because I was really tired and it was a hot Friday night. But can you tell us what happened from your perspective?
Gosh, I don't know. After Trudy's advice, I feel like we broke all of the rules.
Some of the rules we did. What was
some of the rules? Yeah, no, we had a lot of fun, but we also talked about some pretty meaningful things, I think, on that first date.
Yeah, I think we were authentic, definitely. We were ourselves, but we also were like Rod became a high school teacher. He was in a lecturer of teachers, so teacher training at Macquarie University. But I asked you about why you became a teacher, and he told me a beautiful story, which really signaled, about the impact you wanted to have on kids, and that really signaled values to me. It wasn't like I had a checklist. It was just more like, this is a good person, really. And then we went dancing.
Yeah, dancing all night's a pretty good first date. Yeah.
So we weren't talking about past relationships or, anything negative. It was all very positive stuff. So I think we were following Trudy's advice. Maybe we were deep and meaningful conversations, but it was all positive and fun. Amanda and John, I want to come to your so how did the relationship unfold? I mean, when I started dating, I thought it's going to be this big surge of, when I meet the one, I'll know it's him, and, life is going to change instantly, and I'll feel like, my heart's on a roller coaster kind of thing, and it will be really intense. It wasn't like that for me in the end, and I kind of questioned if something was going wrong, because our relationship progressed quite slowly and steadily. How did your relationship unfold in the early days?
I think because, to be fair, John has an extreme high emotional intelligence for the work that he's done, and it made things easier to have really good conversations, like exploring our interests and sharing our travel stories. And then the entertaining, it was restaurant to restaurant dates. I think for a month we had a nice, casual, relaxed dating, but it was just talking to get to know each other until John threw in the mix about, hey, do you want to go away for the weekend? I get an Airbnb, bring the dogs. And I went,
2-bedroom.
Okay, 2-bedroom. Okay.
How far into the dating process was that?
A month.
4 weeks, yeah.
4 weeks.
Okay.
Just for me, it was about getting away from the normal environment, just to assess how we'd be coexisting together for a little while. And we both discovered we love cooking, we love good wine, we love great music, we danced a lot, and we had a ball.
Yeah.
And was that what kind of cemented the relationship, you think, going away for that weekend?
I think by about 6 or 8 weeks in, for me, I remember having the conversation in my head with myself that I couldn't see any showstoppers. Everything that we discussed around health, spirituality, whatever our values were, everything that we discussed, there was full alignment. And even to this day, we've never really had an argument around stuff. We'll blow off at each other every now and again, but we found ways to navigate and build what I believe is a very, 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 very deep love. And that's why we then ended up getting married earlier this year, because we felt that this was it for us for the rest of our lives.
Yeah. That's lovely. Well, congratulations on getting
it.
It's funny though, because it's just hearing your story, it's actually really similar to our story, in that we met, at a restaurant. I know that, you might have enjoyed coffee dates, but I do I do have to say that I agree with Trudy that romance, if you look at what actually worked in terms of creating like that long-term relationship, it was the dinner barn. It was for us as well, but we also 6 weeks into our relationship went away for the weekend to Byron Bay, and I think that, I don't know if there's anything you want to share about that, Rod, that I feel like that was a kind of cemented the relationship, and that we cohabiting together, we have had a lot more conversations, and you kind of got a sense of what it would be like to be with this person as a partner.
Yeah, and also shows a bit of the commitment to each other to be able to go to that stage.
Yeah,
it was great. It was a really good thing to do.
I think 6 weeks is a good time frame to then see how you're gelling, spend the weekend together.
Yeah.
You leave the cap off the toothpaste.
Damn it, he leaves the toilet seat up.
I was looking for all those little signs, and then we dated on and off for a while. We then moved between homes a fair bit because I had my boys 50% of the time. I think it was about 8 weeks in before Amanda met my sons. That was really easy. Amanda got on really, really well with them. We have a blended family now with dogs, so that was really the only challenging part of bringing it together. And so we moved in together 2 weeks before we got married. So it's been.
And there were different situations because our relationship evolved into COVID times, because we were still in the dating, being in a relationship through COVID. And I felt some of the stresses because we had to even pick at one point what postcode to live in for lockdown. Well, shit. So I had to move out of my place and moved into John's place temporarily just to cope with that concept that you've got to be insular and create your own lockdown bubble. So,
which was Christmas last year, was
yeah,
the first lockdown in Sydney. Yeah.
And that was, it's not just me and John being under the same roof for a long period of time. It's now I'm with his boys. Yeah. So it was a taste now of stepmother life. Like, whoa. But it was very, very clear from the onset that I was not in that role, because they've got an awesome mother.
Yeah.
She's beautiful. I have the privilege of being an adult in their life that they can look up to, and I can influence positively in anywhere I can.
I want to go, thank you. Thanks for being so open and willing to describe the early stages of a relationship there. I want to go to questions from the audience. I have a lot of questions for everyone. Trudy, there is so many questions coming from you. For you, I could be here all day, but I'm just going to kind of try and rapid fire them as much as possible. So one question has come up more than once, is just some curiosity stuff. So do you have more women than men, or vice versa, that come to a matchmaker? What is the kind of demographic?
We get a lot of inquiries from, obviously, women and men. We get slightly more from women, but we don't take everybody on. We make sure that everybody's in the right headspace, that they have realistic criteria, that we can work with everyone. So we work hard to keep an even balance, because it has to be even for it to work in everybody's interests. But I will say that we do get slightly more applications from women, but we make sure that we keep things even.
I'm getting asked, so one question is coming up on the chat a lot, is talking about people like paying for dates. So this guy saying that they're expected to pay every time. My rule was that often the guy would insist to pay. I mean, I don't know how everyone else feels about this, but I've created my own personal rule when I was going on lots of dates, that if I knew I wasn't going to see the person again, I would always insist on paying half, because I didn't want to feel like, you paid for my dinner and I'm not going to go out with you again. But if the guy really wanted to pay and it was a really nice date, then I would go along with it, because they often insist. But what do you think? Look,
I have to explain that my clients are all executives, business owners, professionals. They're mostly, they're earning, they're very financially secure. So I always encourage that the man pays for the first date. I think it's very chivalrous, and I think I know that my members like traditional gender roles, so they enjoy that. But after that, I think it's totally fine to the next date, the woman pays, or you can go halves. But I think women like to have that chivalry on a first date.
I mean, on our first date, I have to say, Rod, we split the bill. I don't know if you remember that or not, but I don't know
So
why I
it's
remember
like,
that.
yeah,
I didn't care at all, but it obviously worked out really well. What do you think, Amanda and John? Who pays on a first date?
I did.
Yes, John insisted in September and goes, no, I called the date because he chose the location and picked the date. So I went, okay, fine. And I said, but next time it can't always be that way. So it became a jest of how I, softened and said, like, I don't want it to be like that all the time. And he was just like, okay. And it was just relaxed.
It was easy.
Easy. I don't think I'm, yes, a feminist, but I really don't think it's a waste of time and energy getting your nose out of joint over that. If they are cool about 50-50, fine. If they want to pay, fine. And if a guy offers to pay, I think it's not fair that he's then begrudges paying later.
Yeah, totally.
That doesn't make sense.
The funny thing, isn't it? I mean, I just found lots of guys really wanted to pay. And if you're like, well, if you really want to pay, then fine.
Yeah.
I think I probably offered to pay, and then you were like, I probably offered, let's go halves, and you're like, okay, whatever. It wasn't a big deal, but I do think it is. Yeah.
And I'm going to name the elephant in the room because I do a lot of coaching around this stuff as well with men. And the elephant in the room is that men need to be very clear that when they step into pay, are they stepping into pay from a chivalrous place, or are they stepping into pay because there's an expectation it's going to lead to something else? And I think that is read very clearly by women. Women are far smarter than we give them credit for in the sense of intuition in that way. And I think men need to show up incredibly authentic, because if you don't, they're going to get busted.
That's a really good point.
Simple as that.
Question about after a date, how soon should you contact the person? And how long should you be prepared to wait for someone to contact you after a first date? Trudy, what do you think?
Well, I really like it when the man, you've gone out for dinner, you're now in the taxi on the way home, and it's lovely when you get a message, half an hour later, had a great night, thanks, can't wait to see you again. That little after date text is really lovely.
Yeah, I think that's totally true. We definitely did that, didn't we?
Yep, we did that.
Yeah, I highly recommend that. That does do the trick. Because I remember John texted to say, thanking me for a really fun night, that he found me very interesting, and he really is looking forward to catching up and having further opportunities of conversations, kind of thing. I can't remember the words, but it was really nice. It was complimentary, and it was very hopeful at pre-setting the next date.
There's nothing in the I love that as well. Rod sent me a text from the taxi, or as soon as you got home, I think, and just saying it was a great night, lovely to meet you, kind of thing. And then you sent me another message in the morning because you've been reading my column online. So I was like, I went to sleep happy, and then I woke up happy because I had this other message. I was like, you're still thinking about me, isn't that lovely?
That is beautiful.
Yeah,
I
thought
that, or I'm a stalker.
Yeah. I remember reading that and thought that was really lovely, because what also he was doing was letting you know clearly that he was interested. There was no miscommunication. It wasn't in doubt. It was clear that he was saying, look, I find you interesting, I like you, I'm I want to see where this is going.
Yeah. Okay, question from a single mum. So obviously when you've got kids, you really you want to protect yourself when you're dating. So how do you know this person says, is this person, how do you find out quickly if someone is dating material, or she doesn't have room in her heart for toxic people? So how can you tell on that first date, or even before the first date on a phone call, if someone is likely to be a nice person? What do you recommend? I mean, you interview people before, so you try and weed those people out. But, a lot of people don't have that luxury. So how could we learn from what you know in interviewing people, how to weed out those toxic people that are not good?
Well, look, that's you've just got to speak from the heart and ask them really good questions to understand what their motivations are, what their life stage is, what they're looking for. I would, if I was in that position, I would really want to think about some good questions that I'd want to ask them on the phone when we had a chat, not job interview style. I mean, really, trying to understand where their headspace is at. Have they had a long relationship? Have they been out of one, recently? Not anything about why it broke up. We're not going there, but just try to understand, what they might be looking for now.
Yeah,
you talk about it in your book actually a lot, about a man being ripe.
Yes, I do. I mean, the right thing. Well, so I'll share what that insight was. On my, I went on a date with someone who was very handsome, and we kissed, and I thought, oh, this guy's great. And then he said, I'll call you tomorrow, and then never called me again. So I was pretty upset, and went to my therapist, who we had actually on the webinar join us last week, Ruth, who was amazing. So if you haven't seen that webinar, please go and check out the video. I'll include the link in the email I send up tomorrow. But she said, maybe he's not the right match for you. Maybe he's just looking for something, he's looking for something different to who you are. So there's nothing wrong with you. It's just that he's looking for something different, or maybe he's not ripe. And so her advice was that, men will go through different phases in their life. They'll focus on their career and their friends. And at some stage, just like you described, John, you did some work on yourself, and then you kind of got to that point, and Amanda, you described it as well, actually, where you're like, right, okay, I'm now ready to look for a partner and find a relationship. So you want to, and that she described that as being ripe. And she said, you need to find one like that, ripe, ready to be picked. And so I think that's, trying to work out on the call if someone is actually looking for a relationship. And, that is a really good thing a good way of working out whether someone's genuine or not in their search.
And look, with apps now, there's a big disposable dating culture mindset. It's what I call it. People think that there's an abundance of choice. So, they're happy to return to the dating pool if someone isn't quite right. And alongside of that, there's also a big hookup culture, that everyone that's on an app is just here to have fun and a fling, and that's not true, but there is a small percentage of people that are on there for a relationship. You just have to be clear about what you're there for.
Yeah. A question for the couples. So question is, how frequently did each couple see each other after the first date? So I might go to you, Amanda and John. What was after the first date? When did you see each other again? How often did you see each other leading up to that weekend that you had away?
Well, to be fair, it was the time of year was interesting because you had just moved house. So there was a lot happening because there was Christmas, then there was the New Year's, as things fell in because there's family and friends of what was happening in our lives that we weren't ready to share. Do you know what I mean? For socializing, to bring each other into the fold. So I think it would have been about maybe a week.
I think it was first gap was a week.
It was a week. And then I think it was almost 5 days to 7 days, might have been like the next week. So it was like weekly, but there was conversations happening over the phone. So we were communicating via the phone. Before the very first date at the pub, our communication was only text through RSVP.
Okay.
It was after our conversation and rapport building on our first date that became then the phone conversations beginning the next date.
Okay, that makes sense. And Rod, we had I don't know if you want to describe what happened after our first date, but we had a tragic event which kept us apart for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, my father was tragically killed on the morning after our date. So I was out dancing all night, came home, sent my text message, went to sleep, and woke up to the police ringing me, telling me that, my mum's sitting at home, with all the family descending upon the house. So I then went off the non-compos mentis for 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, well, you sent me, so I was at home, yeah, because we texted in the morning and then you just disappeared. And I was freaking out in the afternoon thinking, thinking it was all about me and like what had happened. And then I heard from you the next day about what had happened. So it's a, I mean, it is a kind of lesson in that, is that if someone does disappear, it's not necessarily about you.
Yes.
Things going on. And then we saw each other. We spoke on the phone, I think, a week later, and then we saw each other 2 weeks, and a week after that. And then probably it was pretty much every few days, I'd say, after that. Definitely probably twice a week in those early stages. Yeah. I have a question, Trudy, about age difference. This must help a lot. I'm 71 and I've dated women close to my age, but I find them boring. I'm not ready for babysitting grandkids. I'm intellectually and physically active, but I have history based on my demographic. What do you think in terms of, do you get this a lot with your, executive clients that, and what do you say? What makes a good age difference? Does age even matter?
Okay, so look, age doesn't matter. What's important is that you have an alignment of life stage, that an alignment of energy levels. But in saying that, most women will agree to go out with a man who's either around, 5, max 7 years older than she is. That's normal for my clients. So I would say that you have to have life stage and energy levels in alignment. And that's if you don't have those, it's very, very difficult for an age gap to work. And in fact, divorce rates skyrocket if there's more than a 7-year age gap.
What's between you and Claire?
So it's about energy levels. I mean, I'm sure,
and life stage.
I'm sure there's other women who are in 70, late 60s that have high energy as well. So it's about life stage and energy level, not necessarily about the number. Although when you step over that 7-year mark, I guess you just have different experiences, right? And you're talking a different language, I think. When I think,
look, if she's fortunate to to be in that space, all the power to her, and she finds a man that's also a good fit for her, that's great. So
but I think that's a good message for men who are watching, who are thinking they're going to date someone 20 years younger than them, that they may find that, but it's most normal, sane women, not saying that you have to be sane to this, but just in general, will date someone up to 7 years older than them. That is the normal. So you're ruling out a large number of people. Question, this is I love this question. What's the best time for a first kiss? Do you have anything on this, Trudy? I'll go to Amanda and John as well, and Rod.
Look, when it feels right. If it feels right at the end of the date, go for it. If you're genuine and you feel it and you think that it's, you want to express yourself that way, I wouldn't say that you have to wait until, date number 3 or, anything like that. I would say be genuine, be in touch with how you're feeling.
Yeah.
I'm with Trudy.
Yes. Oh, sorry, Rod.
I'm with Trudy on that one.
We kissed on our second date. I kissed you in the taxi on the way home. I gave you a kiss on the cheek, which was sweet, I thought. And then we kissed on the second date. But I was waiting for it, so it was nice.
Yeah, it was.
Amanda and John.
I think, well, for us, when our first date finished, it was a really lovely hug and a kiss on the cheek. The kiss, I think, came on was it the third day?
Third date, I think.
We'd been to a Thai restaurant and we were out at the car park behind the restaurant, and that's when we kissed. And it was nice because it was beautiful. a warm evening. The tree was there. It was kind of the romantic moment. It was spontaneous and felt the right timing for to part ways after that day. Again, like you say, Trudy, it's totally up to you when you feel comfortable.
That's right. And there are other things you can do, obviously, before you kiss, like, hand holding and leaning into someone to whisper something in their ear, putting your hand behind their back as you walk towards the table and guiding them. There's lots of ways to increase that.
I would agree, because there's so many more ways like that, is way more intimate than that, trying to get in the face of the first kiss. So I remember how amazing it felt when we were walking together on I think it was our second date, and John reached out and took my hand, and it was the way he reached for my hand, and his fingers just slid between my fingers so easily, and he held my hand, and it was just like, whoa. That was personal and felt very intimate, that moment. So, I mean,
that's a lovely, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
We are running slightly over time, so I'm going to have to wrap up soon, but there was one question. I was just scrolling through the questions to see if there's anything that I've missed that was I thought was really important. And there was one question from Sylvia that I just want to put to, I'll put to Trudy actually first. So what are your, and then we'll probably wrap up. What are your thoughts about relationship experts that say for women to lean right back and for the man to initiate texts, plan dates, and lead a first date, letting the man ask the questions? What do you say to them? That is something that you hear relationship experts say. What do you say?
Letting the man ask the questions on the date.
Let the man take the initiative. I mean, it's like the opposite really to what I did, but that some relationship experts say that women should lean back, let men approach you on the dating sites, let men do the messaging, let men kind of send the texts and plan the date. I mean, how much of that do you think is true?
Look, I can tell you from my clients' perspectives that they like a man with a plan. They like that a man, because look, the way that our process works is that we brief both parties on each other, and then we give the man the lady's number, and he calls her. They have a brief chat, and they make the arrangements to meet, and that's how it unfolds. So I know that my ladies like it when the man rings and says, hey, would you like to go for drinks? How about this place? Yeah, that's great. Are you free on this night? Great, I'll meet you there. They really enjoy that the man has put some thought into the date and has a suggestion. That's just my clients that prefer that method.
Yeah.
I think that traditional gender roles do work, but that's, if that speaks to you, that's something that will be more effective. Amanda, you seem very, very feminine. You have a lovely feminine energy, and I can see that John has a really lovely masculine energy, and that dynamic is obvious to me between the two of you. So I personally see those roles working really well with my clients. And you are nodding at me, Rod.
Yep. Yeah. I can see why that would work. I can see that expectation out there when I was dating too.
So I just want to add to that. I do think from a woman's perspective, I do find that attractive when the man, like you booked I remember when we had a date, we met at the winery, and I thought we were meeting for a drink, but you had already booked a table for dinner, and it was a Friday night, and it's hard to get a table at the winery on a Friday night. So I liked that you booked a table. I don't know, just that registered in my head because I remember it after all this time. But I'd also add that I really took control of my own process in terms of I wasn't going to sit back and wait for men to approach me on the dating apps. I was out there, I was messaging, I would always make the first contacts because, on RSVP, I actually paid the thing so that no one could see my profile. So people could only see me if I messaged them first. So, and then I would take the initiative to go out there, and I was going to own the fact that I wanted to find love, and I wasn't going to sit back and just wait for it to kind of fall in my lap. And I would set up the phone calls, and then I would suggest the phone calls, And then I would often suggest the dates just because I wasn't going to sit around and wait. That's not to say that I didn't like it when a man did the suggesting or was kind of taking the lead. I just think that, you know, you got to be proactive.
Yeah, that's your proactive nature. That's your like get the job done. You know, this is a project that we have to you know,
Yes.
get a result from. So, you know, you had that mindset, which is totally understandable.
Thank you so much, everyone. We've run 10 minutes over time. So we have videoed this event. We'll put it up on the site. So we'll send you a link to this tomorrow. There is another event, our last event next Friday night, sorry, next Tuesday night is the last of the series. And we will email you a link to that event. I'll email it to you straight after this event, actually. So that you can register it. It's we've got psychologist Gemma Gilchrist, who are going to be talking about relationships. We've also got a singles advocate and a local New South Wales MP who was the person who lobbied for the singles bubble. We've got an ABC journalist. It's going to be a really great discussion next Tuesday night, our last of these events. I want to thank Trudy. Thank you, Rod. Love you very much, honey. Thank you, Amanda and John, for being so open and sharing. If you want to find out more about Trudy Gilbert, we've shared a link in the chat, but I'll also send that out in the follow-up email, trudygilbert.com. Amanda and John, I know you both do coaching, so I'm going to share a link to your website as well in the email that I send out to follow up. If you'd like to get in touch with Amanda and John, I really hope you enjoyed that event. This event, I know that that was such a fun discussion, and I feel like I learned a lot as well from listening to you all. Congratulations, Amanda and John. Finally, thank you to RSVP for partnering with us and putting these events on. As I mentioned before, RSVP seems to be the site people who are serious about looking for a real relationship are on right now. So thank you very much for them for kind of bringing this community together. And if you haven't checked out my book, please do. 138 dates. You'll find my story, but also kind of all the tips and kind of guidelines that I wrote along the way. And this, thank you, Trudy. And the story, you know, it's written like a novel, even though it's very kind of like there's a lot of guidelines in it as well. So we'll share a link to that in the email that I'm about to send as well. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming, and we will sign out.